Oh, sweet Jesus. Finally. The Minnesota Wild win in overtime 5-4 against the Ottawa Senators. And boy, was this game just an emotional gut check for really both teams, honestly. So, whew. Well, without further ado, let's get into this. So yeah, as I just mentioned, the Minnesota Wild managed to finally, good lord. But yeah, the Minnesota Wild win 5-4 in overtime on a Kaprizov overtime goal. Finally, Kaprizov gets into the goal charts. I mean, I feel bad for Kaprizov because at this point, it's just like between him and Fiala, they just cannot get anything going as far as really like the goal scoring is concerned. I mean, Kaprizov has had plenty of assists this year, but it's just like he finally gets one to go in the back of the net. So who knows? I mean, hopefully this will be one of many for us because again, he's a crucial piece to this offense. I mean, whew. Boy, that should not have gone to that point, though. And, well, let's go ahead and break this down here because the Wild were up 3-1 at the end of the first period thanks to Foligno, Addison, and, well, ironically enough, Foligno again was one of the, two of the goals scored. Couldn't quite get that hat trick for the Moose, but hey, I mean, I'll take it, though. You know, a win's a win at the end of the day. But, oh boy, that second period, though, yikes. And I mean yikes. By the way, congratulations to Kalen Addison, too, who got that last goal in the first period, getting his first goal as an NHL player. But still, though, that second period, oh boy. I mean, good God, that was bad. I mean, whew. First, that high stick challenge, which, I mean, those are always so tricky to do because, again, it's one of those things where, I mean, if you're wrong, well, let's just say, not only were the Wild wrong, but because of that, they went from a 3-1 lead to a 3-3 tie. And then in yet another power play, the Ottawa Senators score to make it 4-3. But then, thanks to Moose getting his second of the game, manages to make it 4-4 going into the third. And oh boy, did we need that in the worst way at that point. I mean, the Ottawa Senators had the momentum 100% at that point. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if the Ottawa Senators would have dropped another 2 or 3 behind the net, but yeah, third period was very eventful, though. I mean, both sides back and forth had a lot of opportunities on the net, but none of them went in, and overtime we go. And then, not really a lot going on there. Then Kaprizov finally gets one to go into the back of the net. Oh, man. Whew, I'll tell you what, though. This team definitely makes it interesting. I mean, the way that the Vikings played on Sunday, and the way that the Wild looked over the last few games, because going into this game, they were 1-3 in the... It was not good, this last road series in Colorado and Seattle, because let's just say they scored 2 goals and gave up 8. Yeah, not good. But thankfully they come home and boy, they got the game done here, but boy, it should not have gotten to that point, as I mentioned before, because 3-1 at the end of the first period. But again, if you talk to a lot of hockey fans, they will tell you that 3-1 is arguably one of the worst scores to have. just because the 3-1 curse is a real thing. Trust me, I've seen it before. Not with the Wild per se, but, just overall. But, man. Oh, boy. I'll tell you what, resiliency with this team, though. I mean, at least from the games that I've seen, but again, Zuccarello's out still. I mean, arguably one of the biggest pieces of the Wild is still out. Greenway is out. Now, whatever you want to say about Greenway, if you're one of those who like Greenway, or if you're one of those that think we should have traded him away, it is what it is. I mean, but again, at the end of the day, 5-4, Minnesota Wild win in overtime to go to 6-3. Now we get to go take on Sidney Crosby and the boys in Pittsburgh before coming back home for one more against the Islanders. So, yeah. Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. I mean, I'll tell you what, though. This Wild team, you can't count them out in any way. I mean, yeah, sure, last couple games before this, they were just absolutely, raked over the coals, basically. At least score-wise. But again, in sports, hockey, football, whatever, I mean, you can't always go off what the score says. I mean, just because it's like a, let's say a 4-0 or 4-1 game, doesn't necessarily mean it's a 4-0 game. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where the score, yeah, sure, at the end of the day, that's what matters. I mean, that's what gets you the wins, the losses, or the ties. But it's just like, at the end of the day, you can't always go off of the score as far as how the game actually was. So, but again, the Wild, they find a way to get it done at the end of the day. And Kirill Kaprizov with his third career overtime goal. I mean, hey, at the end of the day, you'll take them any way you can get them. Because scoring is very difficult in hockey. Very difficult in the NHL. And hell, just very difficult in sports in general. But hopefully this is a sign of things to come for Kaprizov and Fiala. Because both of them have had plenty of opportunities in this one. So, but yeah. Basically, to wrap this up, again, as I mentioned a few times in this video already, the Wild managed to pull this one off. 5-4 against Ottawa in overtime. So, yeah. And like I say, the Wild have been getting shots on the goal, too, which is nice to see. I mean, in years past, it just seems like the Wild are more defense-oriented and just, not willing to go into the net. But, I mean, the Wild were peppering shots, so. And not to mention, Ottawa is not the same dumpster fire team they've been in the past couple of seasons. I mean, they definitely have improved big time over the last few seasons. But, I mean, like I said, you can't take any team lightly. I mean, there's a reason they're playing in the NHL. It's no different than in the NFL. I mean, as I mentioned before, it's just like, you're still one of the top players in your entire league. Even if you're, called up from the minors or whatever, you're still one of the top players. So, again, you can't take any team lightly. But again, a win is a win. They don't ask you how, they ask you how many. 5-4, Minnesota wins. Let's go to Pittsburgh, boys. And have a good night.